authors who write contemporary stories that will have great meaning for us. And wow, we have a really good panel. I had the opportunity to meet with them the other evening, and we chatted, and it was incredible, some of the stuff that they are putting out there, and their heart for writing, and inspired me. And I was just getting to know them. So you're going to get to know them today too. I'm going to give a chance for each of them to just give you a very brief introduction. I have some specific things that I'd like to pose to them, but just tell what their name and the book that they are presenting today, just the title of the book. We'll get into that a little bit, what it is. So Liana, let's start with you.
Okay, hi everyone. It's nice to see you all. My name's Liana George. I am an author outside of Houston, and I have written 2 books. They're in a series called the Hopeful Heart series. And I'm going to click on this to remember. I can't remember which of the ones Perfectly Placed. So Perfectly Placed is book 2 in the series. It takes place 6 weeks after Perfectly Arranged, which is book 1. And it just released in July of this year. And the 3rd and final book in the series will come out in April. And it's about a professional organizer who continues her journey. It starts out in book 1 to China, and then in book 2, she returns to China and has some adventures while she is there.
We'll get to some of that in a few minutes, because I know that you also lived in China and you live in Texas. So we'll get to some of the background and some of the stuff we're going to talk about with the book. Chris, how about you going next? Chris Posti. We're not hearing you, so your microphone is off.
Sorry. I live in the Pittsburgh area, and my first novel, my debut novel, which is called Falling Apart, Falling for You, was published on my 70th birthday, April 29th of this year. So it's not my first book, though. I have written 3 nonfiction works and a workbook, and I was a newspaper columnist for about 22 years. But I started writing during the pandemic, as perhaps some of you others did as well.
Okay, and it's going to be interesting, because I took a look at some of the storyline there of these 57-year-old women, and I'm older than that, and
me too.
But that was good. That was great. Brian, there's Brian. BD writes under BD Lawrence.
Yes, hi.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for all of you that have joined. I actually started writing about 30 years ago and had some success in short stories, published 25 of them in magazines and stuff, but then had to take a break due to my full-time job and stuff. I'm a software architect in 3M, and I just took up writing again maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Killer Redemption, which is the book that we're featuring here, is my second book. It's a standalone. I am also working on a series. The first book was out in January. It's called the One-Armed Detective series. So that's right. I live in Chandler, Arizona. So
okay, in Chandler.
Yeah.
Oh, I know the area. Okay, and let's see, Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina Sinisi. I live outside of Charleston, South Carolina, and the book I'm featuring, Why They Call It Falling, is set in Charleston, South Carolina. Actually a fictional town I called Summer Creek, which combines Somerville and Goose Creek, which are suburbs. And it's the 3rd book in a series called the Summer Creek series. And these books are about 3 sisters who lost their father. He was murdered as a security guard when they were young, and now they're adults and they're still dealing with the fallout of that terrible loss.
Okay, interesting. Our missing author, I am going to share Linda Rondo. Rondo. Okay. And she wrote a book called Ghost of Trumbull Mansion. That's not her first book. She's written quite a few. And if you look, she's written some both fiction, nonfiction. She has a wide variety of things. Very interesting. And she one of the quotes on her website, this just struck me because I'm a mom and a grandma. It said, "I prayed for patience and God gave me children." And I think that's one of her books. So that's kind of one of those things. I want patience. I want it right now. 9 months later, you have a baby. Okay, so let's get into this and talk a little bit. I think that one of the things that I get asked as an author is what inspired you to write your story? You know, where'd you get the idea? What was that nugget that you kind of held on to that made you want to do this? Brian, I'm actually going to start with you on this question because I want to focus on the fact too that this would be a great book for someone who's not necessarily a believer, but would, I was thinking of a couple of people that I know, and particularly men that I know who might find it interesting to read and would find redemption in it. What was your inspiration?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciated what Susan Meisner said, because what she said really resonated with me. I am not writing for the Christian market. I mean, I would love it if Christians buy my books, and that's great, but I want to write books that anybody would read. I take the same approach. They're clean. You know, I don't have profanity. I don't have on-page sex. I don't have over-the-top violence. And the inspiration for this story, actually, I've always been fascinated in good versus evil, even before I became a Christian. And this book was actually written before then. And then I shelved it for a while, and I went back and rewrote it. And really the inspiration behind it on the rewrite is the Apostle Paul. You may or may not know the Apostle Paul was a killer. He killed Christians. That was his job. He dragged them out of their homes. He killed them. He brought them to jail. And yet, obviously, he found redemption in Christ's eyes. So I took that same kind of, you know, how can I make that a modern day story? So I took a hitman who works for the mob. He makes a mistake, which I won't tell you because I want you to read the book to find it out. But anyway, it puts him on the wrong side of one of the top mob bosses in the city. So now he's got the mob hunting after him. Plus he's got the FBI after him. And now he meets a Christian woman. And Cora Wilson is I would say she's an everyday Christian. She struggles with her faith. She's trying to do the right thing, but it's hard for her. But she is also the most amazing woman that Lyle Hargrave has ever met. So he's a man that, because of his job, he's locked his emotions away. I mean, you can imagine he gets hired to go kill people. So he really has no emotional base. He just, is a stoic person. And all of a sudden, this woman has totally unlocked everything that he's tried to hide away. So, and again, so the book is his journey of trying to get out of the life, if you will, and trying to keep this woman who he's fallen in love with. And she, for most of the book, doesn't know what he does. So that's the other obstacle there that he's got to get around and over. So that was my inspiration, really, is the Apostle Paul.
Yeah, interesting. And I did read that about when I was researching you, that you said something about the Apostle Paul. And I was thinking, I never thought of the Apostle Paul as a hitman, but he was definitely putting the finger on some people and having them pulled out and everything. So it was very interesting to me. Christina, why they call it falling? And I have a hint of what your inspiration might be, but I want you to tell me about that. But I also am hoping you'll kind of bring forth that mental health aspect, because that's really fascinating.
Thank you. I am a psychology professor, and I have been a psychology professor for 30 years. So I thought about what could I bring to, actually, it wasn't even that purposeful. My characters tend to have like all human beings, problems. And I do bring the informed side of it from having this experience as being a psychologist. The characters in these three sisters in this particular book, they're all dealing with grief that has been postponed, and the fallout of losing your father. The mother, of course, the mother couldn't handle the father's loss and just tried to push it aside and not talk about it. And the heroine of this book, she turned to being popular and a people pleaser. And then her boyfriend, she also had so much up and down emotions, and she was depressed and didn't know it. And her high school boyfriend broke up with her because he couldn't handle it. He was a kid, and he joined the army, he left, and she was pregnant and didn't know it. So it's that part sort of, you know, a very commonplace trope of you got the surprise secret baby. But the difference is I actually wanted to also just sort of figure out, why would somebody ever do that? And she did it because she was so depressed when she found out she was pregnant. She couldn't handle the news. And this book starts when he discovers the child, and then over the book discovers that she's depressed and doesn't really recognize it. And so, and there is such a thing as quite common functional depression, where somebody's clinically depressed, but they function, they do what they need to do. So
I did not realize that you had that psychology piece, but I was fascinated by the kind of stuff that was written about the book. That's cool. Okay.
thank you.
Chris, how about you?
Well, my inspiration happened a number of years ago when I chaired my own 45th high school reunion. It was the first one. And I thought, what an experience. This should be written about. And of course, I did not change the names and write the book. It was nothing like that. But it did serve as the germ of my inspiration. And then when the pandemic hit, I had to find some books to read, like probably all of us. So I went on Amazon to my library. I just couldn't find anything that had female protagonists over the age of maybe 40. They were all young things. And, I wanted to read a clean read, something kind of inspirational, kind of fun, kind of witty, but I wanted it to be about women I could relate to. And they had to be at least 55 in my book. So that's why I made them 57, 40th reunion rather. And, the title of the book is Falling Apart, Falling for You. So all the women come together for their reunion. They have been leading very different lives, and they all have big issues in their lives just now that just happened. And they come together and they organize their 40th reunion. And meanwhile, their town is falling apart financially, and they have to kind of solve the mystery and resolve it. And I think it just has a little bit of romance in it, just enough to make it interesting for each one of them. So that's the falling for you part of it. So, it matched up with what I wanted to read. I think I'm not unique. I also want to say, just like you said, Brian, my book is not just for Christians, although I certainly hope Christians will read it. It is a clean read. It does have a lot of elements about faith, all sorts of denominations, Catholic, Assembly of God, Baptist, and non-denominational, etc. So, it really does cross a wide range of Christian denominations. But I'm an evangelist at heart, and I want this book to be read by people who maybe have backslidden, or maybe they were introduced to the faith when they were very young, but they never really got a good foundation. And I want them to, and I just got my first fan letter the other day. Where did I put it? Somewhere here on my desk. Oh yeah. And this woman said that she could relate so much to my first fan letter. I have to show it to you. She could relate so much to these women, and that, thank you. That made me so happy, because that's what I want people to say. I can relate to that problem. That's something that's going on in my life. But to see how the spiritual element is woven into it, it's not like, oh, here's a Bible verse everything's all solved. It's much more,
Right.
in
Real.
nowadays in life, we don't just get the Bible verse and then have everything turn out perfectly, but the Bible should be
Totally.
guiding us.
If only we could just pick up the verse and go for it, right?
Right. What's the verse for that? I
Yeah.
have a Joyce Meyer book that tells you exactly what verse to go to.
Liana, what was your inspiration?
Well, like you said, my family and I, we moved to China in 2006. My husband's company moved us over there in a matter of 3 weeks. And it was a great experience. We loved every minute of it. And while I was living there, my dad called and said, "Hey, my friend's dad just passed away, and she found this unusual card in his stuff. And she wants to know when you visit Shanghai," because I live just about 2 hours west of Shanghai. She said, "When you visit Shanghai the next time, would you mind just driving by and seeing what's at this address and take a picture?" So I said, "Sure, next time I go." So I did. And of course, we couldn't find the address. My driver said things had changed and stuff like that. So I held on to the card for 10 years because I always thought, I wonder what was there. I wonder why he had it. I wonder, what could have been there? What's the connection? So I tucked it away like most authors do. I tucked the idea away and I held on to it for 10 years. And in the meantime, we lived in China, then we moved to Germany with the company. And then we finally came back to the States after 5 years. And at that time, my kids were getting old enough to where they didn't need mom as much. So it was time to find something new to do. So I started my own professional organizing business, and which was great. I met lots of wonderful people. And the one question I was always asked was, "Oh, I bet you hear the greatest stories, when you're cleaning out people's things." And I was like, I do hear the best stories, because everybody wants to tell you about this particular item that they're about to give away, or why they can't give it away because it's so special. And that's when it hit me. I was like, a professional organizer has a client who, while they're going through her father's deceased items, they come across this business card that's in Chinese, and she doesn't know why he has it. They didn't do business there. And so that leads them on an adventure to China to discover what's at the address. And so that was the inspiration. And so they go there and they find out what's there. And it was an opportunity for me to incorporate what I knew about the culture, trying to give people some idea of what it's about. Because of course, in the last few years, everybody has their own view of China. But I wanted it to give it from my personal perspective as somebody who'd lived there and who understood the people and the culture. So that's where I got my inspiration.
Really good, really good. And I'm going to speak on behalf of Linda right now, just to say the Ghost of Trumbull Mansion. She said that something evil only faith can conquer. If there's something evil that only faith can conquer. And that was what she was wanting to make sure that she included in her book. And it has a little bit of a paranormal when you're starting to read it. It's about paranormal, and you're thinking, how is this? What is this about? What it is? And it's really some satanic kinds of stuff that's going on in this place. And she said that her I don't know if she said it was actually her inspiration, but I can find that. I'll see if I can find where it's an email. So I need to go through it and find that. But do we have any questions from our audience for any of the authors that have presented so far, that have been talking about their books? And did I get everybody? Yeah. What are you working on now? Sarah Hanks is asking. So what are you working on now? You have I know that Liana had you had another one that was perfectly arranged. And then
Perfectly Arranged was that was my debut novel, Perfectly Arranged. And so then Perfectly Placed, which is the featured book here. That's the second book. Like I said, it takes place 6 weeks after. And then I am working on the content edits with my publisher for Perfectly Matched. And that is takes place literally like a few days after Perfectly Placed finishes up. So you can read them standalone, but it kind of makes more sense when you get them all together. But I'm working on that, and I'm also working on a nonfiction book for organizing devotionals. So that's what I'm working on right now.
You're organizing everything. Like, right, don't look at my office behind me. Just,
It's okay, no judgment, I promise.
Okay.
And I don't do that anymore. I'm full-time writer.
I always thought that would be so much fun. Brian, what are you working on now? Are you moving forward with another book right now?
Yeah, so I'm working on just getting close to finishing the first draft of the second book in the series for my one-armed detective series, and
Yes.
this one's set in Arizona and Mexico, and it's about, I mean, my one-armed detective has a passion for rescuing girls from human trafficking, so he's trying to that's what he's doing.
Dear to my heart, because I visited India and then was appalled by human trafficking, and then to realize how prevalent it is in the United States.
Yes.
It's very much so. Okay. So that's interesting. Chris, what are you working on next? What's your...
Well, I'm about 20% done with the second book in this trilogy. These three women, the first book was primarily Suzanne's book, and she's getting married now in book 2. And this is going to be Rachel's book. And I don't know what's going to happen to Rachel. She hasn't told me yet. And then the third book, which I will finish at some point, will be mainly about Marla. But I did take a break because since this was my first novel, I learned so much. You know how it is, you're like a sponge learning everything. So I took a little break and I wrote a very short book, nonfiction, called Before You Write Your Novel, What You Need to Know from the Get-Go. And it's just 90 pages, but I did a brain dump of everything I had learned writing that very first novel.
That was your journalism stuff kicking in there.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
You need to let people know what to do step by step. Is that available on Amazon?
It is. It is.
Okay. What's it called? What you need
before you write your novel.
Before you write your novel.
What to know from the get-go.
Okay. Okay. Christina, how about you? What are you working on now?
I have a lot. Got 2 books that are being considered by a publisher. One of them is a follow-up to a totally different series, a totally different book called Christmas on Ocracoke. And that's what I'm calling my Outer Banks series. And this new one is called Hope of Hatteras. So it's Outer Banks, North Carolina. And the one I'm working on with Hope of Hatteras is, they're not, and by the way, I don't think they're depressing books, even though I deal with these serious topics. But in this book, the heroine has anorexia and does not acknowledge it and fighting it. And she's dating, or she's coming to know a guy who's from the wrong side of the tracks, whose mother has lived a rough life and she's dying, and he can't handle being with a young lady who is also basically killing herself. And so you've got that hard part, but that's also on the Outer Banks and it's beautiful islands.
Right.
And then a totally different series I've started is from where I grew up, called the Blue Ridge series. And I grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia on a family farm that had been in the family since the 1700s. And so that story is called Blue Ridge Promise. And it's actually about something that's sort of funny to admit, but there was a guy when I was in high school on the school bus who asked me to wait for him. And then I graduated and forgot all about his existence. So this story is about the young lady going back home and realizing, wait, I missed out on something here. I totally forgot about you. Oh yeah, you're great.
Okay. Well, I can relate to some of that. And there is absolutely no need to apologize for having really hard issues and for actually saying, this sounds like it's depressing, but it's not, because what it is I think as readers, we can see really horrific things like that, but we also know that sin is sin is sin.
Mhm.
And that people have tough times. Everybody's dealing with something.
Yes,
Everybody's
yes.
dealing with something all the time. And right when you think you're getting things where they're on the upswing, something hits. And so I think those are great when you can see somebody who has those kinds of issues. You can identify with them. Okay, let's see. What question were you hoping I would ask you?
Hmm.
And do any of our oh, here's one. Do your books have goals? What will the reader receive? Joy, reflection, or solutions, and so forth. Do your books have goals? I think we've kind of heard it come through some, that there is redemption, that there is hope, there is life after 50. Sorry. Yeah. Do your books have,
For me,
Christina?
I'm sorry. Do you?
I would say, one thing my books are, I don't want just Christians to read my books, but the faith is right out there, because I have come to that point in life where I can't see God being left out of anything in my life. So, and it's the people, whether they had faith at the beginning of the book or whether they had lost their faith at the beginning of the book, the faith that they find is what helps them get through. And that's, I hope, what then the reader will take away. The joy of, opening the Bible and finding that Bible verse, or praying and getting that feeling of joy because, hey, God actually comforted me.
Excellent.
So,
Yeah, I think that I'm hearing this through all of you, that your characters in your books, just like the people in your lives, are flawed characters. They have issues.
Yeah.
They're dealing with stuff. And when you can see that, that's very helpful. We have another question. Did someone want to answer the other one? Or do you want me to go ahead?
Sorry,
yeah.
Rebecca, let me just say that the ultimate message in my book is redemption is available to anybody. And even though I don't, I'm not writing a Christian novel, every book I write gives the gospel at least once.
Yeah.
So the other hope I have is at least one person could,
Yes,
find saving grace through reading that book.
absolutely. And you said that, what was the first part you said? You said that every
Redemption is available to anybody, no
redemption
matter who you are, it's available to anybody. So.
And I was thinking too, when you said that, Brian, that sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, particularly when I was young in my faith, early in my faith, I couldn't see how God could ever forgive certain people, certain things they had done, and I didn't want to forgive them, and if God can forgive, and I think that can come through as well. That's pretty cool. Here's a question for everyone. This comes from Sarah, and she said, what's your writing process like? Do you discover your characters before you start writing, or do you discover them on the way? Is it part of the journey? I added little words there, Sarah, sorry. What is your writing process like?
So for me, I'm a planner, obviously being a professional organizer and having that background. I do plan a lot. So I spend a lot of time figuring out who my characters are. I will sit down and I will interview them. I'll just start asking them a question, and then I'll let them write the answer, and then I'll come up with another question based on that. I like to give them an Enneagram number. And because the Enneagram has a lot of information, like the lies that you believe about yourself and things like that, that really help when you're developing that character. So I do that. I have at times had to go back and talk to them again, and different scenarios, like what would you have done, or why did you do that? Or I realized that I hadn't done enough research. I think the one thing I've learned after 3 books is the importance of research and just having that, because even in book 3, I mean, I was still looking things up. So I tried to, because I want to make sure that the information I'm sharing is as accurate as I possibly can get it. It's fiction. Can I make a little bit of, wiggle room? I can, but it's really important to me to get it as realistic as possible, especially with contemporary. And so I spent a lot of time doing research, but I feel like I know these characters and know where they're going to go and what they're going to do. So it's fun to me. I enjoy that.
And I think that's good. How many of you discover your characters more along the way? Like you said.
I do. Basically, when I go into a book, I know the beginning, I know the end. So the middle is the journey. I know the main characters, but I don't necessarily know all the other ones.
Yeah.
So, for example, in my current work in process, I wrote a scene where the detective and his companion confront her ex-husband, or actually her dead sister's ex-husband, and he has a teenage girl there with him, and of course my detective has to take things into his own hand, but all of a sudden this girl now becomes part of my story. It was just going to be a thing, but I liked her so much, she's now tagging along with them and getting into all sorts of trouble, and she's got this kind of dad crush on my detective, and it's just giving me an opportunity to do a lot. So I mean, yeah, the things, people will just pop in. It's like, oh, I need somebody here, and
Right.
backstories will come up later. I mean, I do what's called what I call scene ahead. I'll write 3 to 5 scenes ahead, and that's it. I don't plot everything out. So I like to leave some flexibility.
So when they talk about plotsters and pantsters,
I'm a pansting plotster.
plotster. I'm trying to figure out how to combine those words.
I would love to be a plotter. I try so hard to be a plotter. I just feel like it would be so much easier, but I end up being a pantser. And so I wanted to show you, I don't know if you'll be able to see, if I take my computer off, you're probably not going to be able to see them on the wall there. I don't know if you can see those 3
Yeah.
pictures.
Posters.
I have drawings of all 3 of my characters. I have their disc personality profile. That's what I used when I was an executive coach for 30 years. And so I know these women through and through. And so since I know them through and through, they kept talking to me throughout the book, telling me, I would wake up in the middle of the night and they would tell me what to write about them. So, the book didn't turn out at all. And in fact, this book too, even though I'm only 20% through with it, I can see how it's just changing as I go. Even though I had an idea of what I expected to happen, we're off in a different direction already. But I think that's half the fun of it. So I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have an idea of how we should be writing or what we should look like or what the answer should be.
Right.
But then we get the reality of it, what we really do. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Brian, I'm going to ask you, put it in
Oh,
here.
wait 1 second.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My process.
Okay. Yeah, you disappeared there for a second. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I do storyboarding.
Okay.
And I teach storyboarding. I did a class for ACFW for the at-home conference. Now, do I slavishly stick to it? No, but I do love storyboarding because it gives you, if you get stuck, you just look at the board and you're like, oh, okay, that's where I'm supposed to be. This is where I need to get back to. It's just a great, for me, technique of everything's plotted out. I don't have to stick with that, but it's there.
Do any of you storyboard on Scrivener? Do you ever use Scrivener? Do any of you use Scrivener?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I like the hands-on.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Janet, you've used Scrivener. One of our people, Janet, you've used Scrivener. You could unmute, I think. Do I unmute you? Can you unmute you?
I'm
Have you-
unmuted.
Yeah, have you used it for the storyboard aspect where you put a picture in and you have some ideas of who your people are and you could always go to that and pull things out from them?
I haven't done that. I've just upgraded to Scrivener 3, allows me to have like corkboard type storyboarding, and I can break out the different streams into different columns so that like this one plot is one column, and next plot thread is something else, and the next one's something else. So I'm working on that.
It's a great tool.
It is a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
The plug I would make is that you download it for free and try it, and then you find out before you buy it if you like it or not. But yeah, I'm Christina. I was in your ACFW thing. I was just typing a note that I'll
Oh,
erase.
you were.
And I bought the storyboard, but I haven't got far enough to put anything on it yet. So I'm going to be doing a combination of that and Scrivener. I can only do something for a while, and then it overwhelms me, and I have to try something fresh.
Okay.
Thank you. That was inspiring.
Okay, now I'm going to get back to this. I apologize, Brian. Why BD? You go by BD Lawrence.
Yeah, well, you'd asked the question, what questions you hope you'd ask? So that was the question I hope you asked. Because Yolanda was, she switched it from Brian to BD. Well, the reason I write under BD Lawrence is because brianlawrence.com was taken by a wedding planner. So I had to come up with a website that worked, so bdlawrence.com was available. So hence the name.
Actually, that's pretty good. That'd make a great storyline too, of somebody getting confused with Brian Lawrence and Brian Lawrence. I mean, one's a wedding planner and one writes killer novels. So any other questions for our panel? I want to urge all of you, we have a few more minutes, but I want to urge all of you to go to the bookstore that's online and order books. You could do that right here. You don't have to wait to try to find them or go to Amazon or do whatever. But the wedding planner killer. Okay, someone's giving you a title here. Let me think. I had another question for somebody or for all of you. Give me a moment. I'm so sorry. I can't read my writing, and I'm sure it's there. Oh, I was going to ask about how comfortable. Now, Brian, I know you're writing, you have both a female and male character. Your protagonist, I guess your protagonist is the male character, even though it's a killer, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. How comfortable are you writing the female characters? And for the rest of you, how comfortable are you when you're addressing the male character? We all do it, and we all think we know what's in their heads. I used to run things by my husband and say, how would you say this, or what would you think if I came up to you and said this? I don't have that anymore because he went off to heaven, but I'm still trying to get into his head when I'm thinking about some of those. Look at this. This is too funny. They've got a collaboration project going for you guys. Are you reading the comments?
Yeah.
Okay. How hard is it to get into the head of differing characters that are, maybe it's not just because of your gender, maybe it is you're dealing with a killer. I assume, Brian, you're not one. But it was kind of, you're using Liana's using her experience as a planner and organizer and doing those kinds of things. Christy's using her experience as getting the reunion together, and we're relying heavily on our own experiences. What do you do when you have a character that is outside your field or outside of your experiences? What are some of the tricks you use?
Who were you asking? Anybody in particular?
Yeah, anybody in particular? No, just anybody. How do you get in their head? Some people watch
me-
movies. Yeah.
I don't want to overwhelm, but for me, when I am writing, it plays out like a movie. So I hear the characters talking in their own voices without me having to do anything extra. It's like they become their own people in this movie.
Mhm.
Now I've done research. I think it was Liana that was saying that, you learn how much research you need to do for the why they call it fall. Wait a minute, why they call it falling features the gentleman, the hero is in the Army, and my husband was in the Army. And so I asked him questions about the Army. The Hope of Hatteras book I'm working on, the hero is EMT firefighter. And my daughter's ex-boyfriend wasn't, and I started this book while they were still together. I had him proofread for me. So research.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have to agree. I'm not modeling after any one particular person in a significant way, but I'll just tell you one little thing. I have this character named Mitch Mitchell. His real name is Ezra, but he had it changed to Mitch years ago. He didn't want the name Ezra, and he's a bit of a character, and I really like the guy. And in my mind, he's Clint Eastwood. So every time I think of Mitch Mitchell, I see Clint Eastwood. And what would Clint Eastwood say? Well, Clint Eastwood, as we know, is a man of few words. So he just says things, maybe a 2-word answer, or has a real quick reply to somebody. And so that's my little secret. I usually go after an actor.
That's good. I know that my husband showed up in my book. My debut novel was Breathing on Our Own, and he read it and he said, I'm him. I know, and he's just really excited about it. I love this thing that's going on the chat. If you guys are watching it, about they're talking about bringing people together, Brian and Liana, to collaborate on an organized crime. Oh, that didn't sound right. Okay, well, that's not exactly the way it's written. Hilarious. Okay, you guys have been great. What a nice group. Do anybody else have questions or anything?
I'll add to the previous question. I mean, one of the things I have the benefit of, and I'll give you, this is one of my dirty little secrets here. I write crime fiction. So I have the benefit of movies and television, because people expect characters in crime fiction to be certain ways, right? They're called tropes and stuff. So if I was writing literary fiction, I'd have a very difficult time probably taking on, women and women's issues. But since I'm writing crime fiction, there are certain types I can get away with. So I can make them the way I need them to be. Plus, I have the benefit of working in a youth group for 11 years. So doing teenagers isn't that hard. I have lots of examples I can model my teenagers on.
And I will tell you too, I'll just give you this tip as an author. I'm working on something right now that has a detective in it. And so I went to my local, it's Citizens Police Academy, and I graduate on Tuesday, but boy, have I learned a lot. Thank you. And it's been wonderful, but I have made such great contacts with the police officers who want to help me. They want to give me some good advice. They're taking me on tours, took me on they're not called drive-by, ride-alongs.
Where you passed.
The book writes itself. So now we know that in Rebecca's police place she goes on drive-bys.
Okay, thank you all so very much. You've been wonderful. What a great group. I hope this has been helpful for all the participants. If you're writing or if you are reading, if you whatever's going on, that you joined, the reason that brought you here. I hope that this panel session has been fun and enlightening and encouraging to everyone as well. So thank you very much. I think, are we finished now, Yolanda?
Yes, if there are no other questions, we are finished. We have about 15 minutes or so before the awards start. So on behalf of the authors, thank you. And on behalf of the Faith and Fellowship Book Festival Committee, thank you all. I have had fun in this chat. If you know, when I'm sleepy, I tend to get a little goofy. I am a little tired tonight, but this was so fun.
But such great authors, such really great authors doing fun stuff. And I'm excited about all the work you're doing. Just keep it up.
Yes, and please, if you all have books that are eligible for next year, we'll be advertising information about the joining the festival probably around February. So, you know, we would like to have you back if you are so inclined. But this has been fun. So thank you.
Thank you all.
And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.